What's going on, guys, and welcome back to #AskGSM episode 464 here today for October 19th, 2022. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. So what we're going to be doing with this week's episode and next week's episode is that I mentioned this on Twitter as well last night, that we're going to be breaking up the 20 questions I got from Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube in the last 24 hours into two different episodes for next week as well. I'm going away next Monday through Thursday to California, Anaheim specifically. Going to be a fun time. It's a trip many years in the works. I was actually supposed to leave the week of COVID, when COVID first not happened, but first struck the United States on a major scale back in early March. I think it happened that Wednesday, really when everything started to shut down. And I was supposed to leave that Friday, and they actually canceled and they closed Disneyland that Friday, which is the whole reason why we were going. So, long story short, we had it rescheduled for next week. Not at the time, but a couple delays happened. We were supposed to go last year and this year and whatever. So, we're going now. We're going next week. I will not be around for next Wednesday's episode to record that day. So, what I did was, and we got enough questions, so thank you guys for that, to break them out into two different episodes for today and for next week. So, long story short, if you don't hear your question that you sent in the last 24 hours answered in this video, in this episode, it's going to be answered next week. You can continue to send in questions by dropping a comment on this video, tweeting me, whatever. It will not be answered next week because, like I said, I'm recording it either today, tomorrow, whatever. I'll put it up on next Wednesday, but it won't feature any new questions that were going to be sent in the next couple days. So just keep an eye out for that. I will gather any questions you put on this video, next week's video, and answer them in 2 weeks for our next, back to normal episode of #AskGSM. So let's get right into it. All right, I should mention first, if you do want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. So we'll get right into it here, starting with Micah Does It. Their question was, what pay-per-view should WWE eliminate from their calendar for 2023, and what pay-per-view should they bring back? So this is timely because I did a whole article about this today, for today, on Bleacher Report, talking about my quote-unquote reimagined WWE pay-per-view premium live event, whatever you want to call it, schedule for 2023. Obviously coming off reports that Day 1 has been canceled. I don't think WWE has put out an official announcement about it yet. But that pay-per-view, what was supposed to be on January 1st, is no longer happening. And then it was later reported by Brian Alvarez, and we take this with a grain of salt, but it would make sense given all the major, significant positive changes that Triple H has made to WWE since taking over, that the pay-per-view schedule will see a significant overhaul in 2023. More international shows and less gimmick shows. So for my full... the funny thing is that I think I actually did a full pay-per-view schedule as far as what shows I would do when. I think I did that here on this show a couple of months ago, a year ago. I remember doing it at one point. It was definitely in the last year or two. I feel like it was more on the sooner side as far as it happened maybe earlier this year. But I did do a full pay-per-view breakdown as far as what pay-per-views I would do when and where. Where on the schedule. Long story short, though, I would cut out Hell in the Cell, Extreme Rules. I would rebrand Elimination Chamber as either No Way Out. I would get rid of Elimination Chamber as its own pay-per-view, but it sounds like that may not be the case. You do have to remember they're going to keep the two Saudi shows. That's not going anywhere anytime soon, I don't think. Hopefully they can bring back Clash as a UK exclusive show, or just do SummerSlam in the UK one of these years. I think that'd be cool. Anyway, so as far as what pay-per-view they should eliminate, I just mentioned it right there, but the first and foremost, even over Extreme Rules and Elimination Chamber, is fucking Hell in the Cell. The fact that Hell in the Cell is still a show in 2022 is ridiculous to me. It's been around for 13, 14 years. We've had, 13, 14 different Hell in the Cell pay-per-views, dating back to 2009. It's pretty much been around the entire time I've been a WWE fan. I started watching in 08, and in 09, they introduced it as its own pay-per-view concept, which... it was never a good idea. I understand why they did it. They were trying more gimmick shows to because the pay-per-view business for WWE at that point was dying, so they were getting real desperate with fucking bragging rights and Capital Punishment, which was stupid, Breaking Point, all these other sort of shows. A lot of them failed, and now we haven't really had pay-per-views in close to a decade due to the network and Peacock. So why do we still have these gimmick shows is the question. Well, mostly because of Vince McMahon. Now Vince is gone. Let's get rid of Hell in a Cell as its own show. We've had Hell in a Cell matches in WWE not take place at Hell in a Cell. We had one last year with Rollins and Edge at Crown Jewel. That was fantastic. And I'm sure we've had others in the last couple of years, none that really come to mind off the top of my head. I know we had Taker and Shane at WrestleMania 32. That was not good, but that did not take place at Hell in a Cell. So we've had quite a few over the years in WWE that were not at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. I feel like we got one this year. Maybe it was at Hell in a Cell. But I feel like we got other Hell in a Cell matches this year that did not take place at the event. But nonetheless, get rid of Hell in a Cell. And what pay-per-view they should bring back? I mean, there's a whole heap of them. And a lot of them are just cool in name only. Like Unforgiven, No Mercy. There's no real gimmick there, but there doesn't really need to be. I just like the idea of calling a show No Mercy or Unforgiven or Judgment Day's off the table because we have our own faction named Judgment Day now. Any of those would be cool. Rename WrestleMania Backlash back to just Backlash. Calling it WrestleMania Backlash was dumb. They did it for branding purposes. Are really more people going to buy that show with WrestleMania in the title than if it didn't? Maybe a small amount, but not enough to make it worthwhile, I don't think so. I would get rid of that. I'm trying to think, and again, I wrote this entire article about it, but I guess the first one that comes to mind and the top choice would be King of the Ring. Bring back King of the Ring as its own pay-per-view. And it doesn't look like we're getting the tournament this year. I thought last year that it might become an annual thing, that they do Crown Jewel and they do the King and Queens, Queen of the Ring tournaments at Crown Jewel. Because it's called Crown Jewel, King, Queen, it kind of makes sense. Crown Jewel is right around the corner. We're getting the show in like 2 weeks from Saturday. We're not getting the King of the Ring or the Women's Queen's Crown tournament this year. And it might be better off as an every other year thing. But bringing it back as its own pay-per-view, I don't think is a bad thing. More people have asked for it. It's been many years in the making. People want to see it. Add actual stakes where like the winners get title shots at SummerSlam. Bring it back to the June slot. That would probably be my first choice. Bring back King of the Ring as its own pay-per-view. No Mercy, Unforgiven would be cool, giving Halloween Havoc its own pay-per-view on the main roster. In NXT, it's been a lot of fun. I feel like it deserves the bigger main roster treatment, a lot like War Games. One of these years would be cool, but I think first and foremost, it would be King of the Ring. His second question, should WWE reunite the Hurt Business and have them feud with the Bloodline at Day 1, where if the Hurt Business wins, then Bobby Lashley gets a WWE Championship match at the Royal Rumble? Or should we do Lashley versus Reigns at Day 1 instead, but still have them reunite the Hurt Business, but just have the Reigns and Lashley feud only? So we're not getting Day 1. Obviously, he sent this in before the report before it was reported that Day 1 is no more, and we're not getting a Day 1 pay-per-view this year, or ever again, probably, for that matter, which is fine. I like this past year's Day 1 show, but you're not going to be able to have it on January 1st every year, and at that point, you can't really do a show. I mean, it's going to fall on a Monday next year, so what are you going to replace Raw with Day 1? I don't think so. But anyway, the idea of a Hurt Business Bloodline feud would be great. That was something I think a lot of us wanted to see around this time last year when the Hurt Business was kind of sort of getting back together. The Bloodline was at their peak as they are now, obviously, with even more gold. And then they broke up the group again. So to reunite them like twice within the span of a year probably isn't going to happen. Cedric and Shelton are back on main event. MVPs with Omos. They spent the entire first half of the year having Lashley and Omos feud, and by association MVP as well. So to put them back together, especially so quickly on such short notice, I know Day 1 or around that Royal Rumble season isn't for another 3 months. I mean, I would love to see the Hurt Business back together, but they already kind of did this soft reunion a couple of months ago. So, and Lashley's not even with MVP anymore, nor does he need him. So having them as a babyface faction, I think, would be cool against the Bloodline. I don't see it happening that way regardless. I mean, there's no Day 1 pay-per-view anyway, but you're basically saying Hurt Business Bloodline, would I want to see it? Yeah, I would. I'm not really sure how you would get from point A to point B, though, especially with Bobby now feuding with Brock. Is that going to be a one pay-per-view deal? Will they continue to feud going into the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania? I can certainly see that. I could see them having a match at Crown Jewel where Brock wins, and then maybe we don't see Brock again until the Rumble. They eliminate each other, build into a Mania match, maybe like No Holds Barred or like another Fight Pit or whatever. I think that'd be cool. That's what I would do. Roman and Lashley's got to happen at some point, I think. It may not happen until after Roman drops the championship. I just don't know why they don't want to do that match. And even when Vince was in charge, I don't know why they wouldn't want to do it. And Lashley can eat the loss. I mean, he's not undefeated by any means. He can endure the loss and it's okay. But yeah, to answer your question, and sure, I would want to see that. I just don't know how you can do it where it would make sense. I like the fact about doing Hurt Business Bloodline, where if Hurt Business wins, Bobby gets a title shot. That does add stakes. The problem is now you would have to do that on Raw, because from what it looks like at the moment, there's no pay-per-views in between Survivor Series in late November and then the Rumble in late January. Next question comes from, let's see, Joe M. from YouTube. And again, if you don't hear your question answered, it will be answered next week here on the show. His question was, will LA Knight be able to thrive more on SmackDown with his heel turn? I know he's better as a heel, and Triple H likes him, but with heels like Roman Reigns, Karrion Kross, and Gunther being much bigger priorities than him, I fear he runs the risk of being lost in the shuffle, similar to how he was in his early days at NXT. You know, I was thinking about that, and you're not wrong. There are bigger heels on SmackDown than LA Knight right now. LA Knight was never going to be immediately positioned as a main eventer on SmackDown. I think he will in time. I don't think he was never going to be that guy immediately, especially coming off the Maximum Male Models bullshit. But you also have to look at the opposite side, the opposite side of the spectrum as well, with the baby faces. It's not like SmackDown is completely devoid of baby faces. You didn't mention Bray Wyatt, but I assume, based off what we saw last week, Bray Wyatt's probably going to be doing his own thing. I assume Bray will be on the babyface side, so he automatically is like the top babyface on SmackDown. He should be and will be the central focus on the SmackDown side of things as a babyface. So he immediately is number one. Number two, if he isn't already currently, is Drew McIntyre in that role. Drew McIntyre should be the second biggest babyface on SmackDown, if not number one. So you mentioned Roman, you mentioned Karrion, you mentioned Gunther. Will he be higher than any of those guys? Karrion, maybe. Karrion, I guess, was internally positioned as the top two babyface on SmackDown, or top heel on SmackDown, second top heel behind Roman. Gunther has been more, not protected, but like, he's been around a little longer. He's had better booking as far as just being positioned as that top heel. He's at the Intercontinental Championship level anyway. Karrion is right below the main event. I don't see us getting Roman and Karrion anytime soon, if at all. I honestly think he's better off in the heel role, and I'll go into a second reason why in a second. A second reason for why that is in a second. But also on the babyface side, you have Sheamus, who's uber popular right now. Sheamus has been on the roll of his career in the last couple of months. And LA Knight will not be positioned over Sheamus. Sheamus may not have a lot going on right now coming off the Gunther feud, but I don't think he's going to get any higher than Sheamus on that babyface side when Sheamus is as hot as he is. And last Friday, they also brought over Rey Mysterio. You have Nakamura, who's been completely absent from the show. You have Ricochet as a babyface in the mid-card. They needed more mid-card heels. They have a handful on SmackDown. They don't have, like, none, and they just brought in Santos as well. LA and Santos might have, they could be at that same level as far as where they're positioned. But I think LA Knight is honestly perfect in that heel role on SmackDown because I feel like they have bigger baby faces, and Roman also isn't around all the time either. Roman is not a full-time performer on SmackDown. So with Roman not there right now, LA Knight can kind of slide in as not the fourth biggest heel on SmackDown, but the third biggest heel. They push him properly. Roman obviously he's like zero. He's not going anywhere, but he isn't around all the time. He kind of has his own storylines over the World Championship. He's not around every week. That leaves Kross, Gunther, and LA Knight. And as other people have mentioned, I think he's great in both roles. The thing with LA Knight, though, why he got so over in NXT as a face was because he started out as a heel. He will always be a natural heel. His gimmick is made to be a heel. He honestly reminds me of Rock in the sense where he was so fucking great as a heel, like when Rock went heel in 97, 98, whatever it was, and he was so great in that role that eventually, turned him babyface. And then he went heel again and back and forth for the rest of his career. But I think LA Knight is similar in that case where he has to start out as a heel. Raquel Rodriguez, I don't think is as big of a star as LA Knight can be, but she's another example where I feel like when she came to the main roster, she's done well for herself, but I feel like she would be more over because what happened in NXT was she started out as a dominant heel. And then through people respecting her and whatever, she turned face and people liked her. So I feel like you kind of have to have that heel treatment first before you can go babyface. He was obviously over to an extent on SmackDown last week when he played babyface in that Mansoor match. But I just think long term it would be better for him to be a heel first, get that heat, have the main roster audience realize, well, this guy's really fucking entertaining, and that's what turns him babyface over time. Like The Miz at one point, people can say what they want to about The Miz and how awful of a babyface he is. At various points, especially when he turned early on in late 2012 and early 2013, and especially in 2019, he was really fucking over as a face. People really liked The Miz. He could have never started out as a babyface in WWE. He had to be annoying first. He had to do Miz things before people could respect him and turn him face. So that's why I think LA Knight is better off as a heel. I agree. I would like to see him as a babyface. I was ready to cheer LA Knight on SmackDown. But I do think long-term booking-wise, it would be wiser to have him in the heel role first before the people inevitably turn him babyface on Friday nights. No L's first question. When the rivalry is all said and done between Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez, who do you think will be a bigger star coming out of it? It's a good question. I think both women are very talented. I think both women will be champions on the main roster. You could honestly go either way. I think Roxanne Perez is going to win on Saturday at Halloween Havoc. I'm going to say Roxanne because, she's had setback after setback. She won the tournament. She won the breakout tournament earlier this year, but she won the tag titles, had her partner turn on her. She lost her shot at the NXT Women's Championship. She lost to Cora Jade at the Heatwave show 2 months ago. She needs a win. She also lost last night to Rhea Ripley, which was a very good match, by the way. She needs a win. I feel like she'll be the one they push coming out of that show. I don't know if she gets another shot with Mandy Rose, because she probably isn't winning. She should be the one to dethrone Mandy Rose as champion. I don't see that happening. Cora Jade should also do well for herself, though. Roxanne Perez was the one that wrestled on SmackDown last week. Cora Jade did not wrestle on Raw. She appeared in a very brief backstage segment. So did Roxanne. Roxanne got in the ring on SmackDown, did well for herself, and had a brighter showing. She looked like the brighter star in that matchup. So she was actually one of the better women in that match compared to who she was in the ring with that. I mean, there was a lot of good women in that match, but she kind of had a better performance, it seemed, than a majority of the women that were in that match. Nonetheless, though, I do think coming out, if you're talking like overall in their careers in WWE, 10 years down the road, who will be a bigger star, I would probably still say Roxanne, although Cora is very good in her own right. I just feel like if I had to promote one of these women right now to the main roster, it would be Roxanne. I think she is younger than Cora. She does feel more ready, though, for whatever reason. She's not 100% polished, obviously. But I think Cora needs more work with like her mic work and her character stuff and her in-ring work. She is very, very good. I think Roxanne Perez just has an edge. Maybe just being in Ring of Honor and an Impact for a while and MLW. Cora wrestled on Dark a few times. I remember that. It didn't seem like she had as much high-profile experience as Roxanne did before she came to WWE. So I'm going to say Roxanne also, in addition to the fact I think she wins on Saturday too. Their second question, do you see Liv Morgan joining Bray Wyatt's new group? I don't know we don't even know if he's getting a group is the thing. That's the rumor right now. I know the people have said, he's getting a group. It's going to be called the Wyatt Six. That's all speculation. I think he might. I think he could. Am I sold on it right now? No. I know he worked great with the Wyatt family. I don't think Bray needs a group. But that's not to say I don't think it could work. I think Bray can make anything work if he really puts his mind to it and he makes the most of every opportunity he's given. Liv Morgan joining it, if they want a female in there, I guess she would make sense. I was going to say Liv's never been a part of a faction before. She literally debuted as part of a fucking faction in the Riot Squad. But her doing like a darker heel character would be cool. So I could see it. I don't know if it's going to happen. But I could see it, especially if they put Bo in there. I could see them wanting to have Bo and Liv work together because they're a real-life couple. By all accounts, I think they're still together. I'm pretty sure. I don't think they're married or anything, but I think they would jump at the opportunity to work together on TV. Not acknowledge they're a couple, I don't think, but I would assume Bo would be a part of it, and Liv could be a part of it too, especially if she's doing this darker, twisted character. I don't know if you can explain Liv being a part of it this entire time. She kind of had that sinister smile on her face at Extreme Rules, and then an hour later, she's wearing the fucking Sister Abigail gear? That would be weird. I will say this, I would rather have Liv in that group than Alexa. I'd rather see, I think Alexa played her role very well early on with Bray Wyatt doing the whole knockoff Sister Abigail shit. The problem was that after Bray left, and they kind of pushed her on her own, whatever they had her doing was awful. She made the most of it, but the gimmicky shit was fucking terrible. I'd rather see Alexa go back to doing what she was doing as a heel years ago. Kind of go back to being Little Miss Bliss, 6 Feet of Fury, whatever. She's been a fine face, but I feel like she really needs a new character change. Not being with Bray Wyatt, though. I think if you're going to put a female in there, Liv would be a good choice. Justin K., their first question was, Baron Corbin finally got his first name back, and now he has JBL as his manager. Could you see this eventually turning Corbin back into his lone wolf persona, and should he turn on JBL? Yeah, no, I was happy to see Corbin back to being Baron Corbin. No more Happy Corbin, King Corbin, whatever the fuck Corbin, bum-ass Corbin, which was a great gimmick, by the way. I'm glad he's back to being Baron Corbin, and I don't love whatever new character he's doing. The attire didn't look great, and he's kind of like a more aggressive Happy Corbin, just without the name. It's like a remix song. I was hoping, as many of you were, that he would come out to his old theme song, the End of Days song, which is fucking great, by Jim Johnston and whoever else worked on it. It's a great song, and he used it for years, too, and I feel like the best version of Baron Corbin, and I like Baron Corbin. I feel like I'm in the minority of Baron Corbin fans. I'm not his, I don't have his poster on my wall, but I like Baron Corbin. I feel like the best he ever was in the main roster in terms of how he was positioned and the character stuff was when he first showed up in 2016 through like late 2017. I feel like when you get into his Raw run, when he was like the Constable Corbin shit, that was just stupid. That was a waste of time. The King Corbin stuff was not good. Then you had... what else? Like I mentioned, Happy Corbin. All of these gimmicks were fine early on, and then they just went on for way too fucking long. I just want him to be Baron Corbin squashing indie people. I think JBL made a comment about indie people on Raw this week, saying, oh, you're in bingo halls for 10 years, blah, blah, blah. I missed it. I saw it after the fact. That's fucking funny. Go back to doing that sort of shit. I don't see him going back to being the lone wolf. I think that's dead and gone. I want him to bring back that music. I want him to kind of be that... I want him to be that brooding character that he was 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago in NXT. I mean, I know he doesn't have the long hair anymore, but who gives a shit? But my question is, why would they have him with JBL? I mean, I guess they could use JBL for a few weeks. He turns on him, and then that's it. That could certainly work. I honestly, first of all, I like the pairing. I don't know if it's permanent. From how I've heard people talk about it, it sounds like JBL may only be on Raw for a few weeks, and then he won't be on there every week. I don't know if JBL wants to be on there every week as a manager, as an on-air personality, so it might be a short-lived thing. Corbin turns on him to get more heat. It would be cool if it was the Lone Wolf again. I just don't know why you wouldn't introduce him as such from the get-go. Like, why go through this whole thing of having him be introduced by JBL? He's a different character, and then he goes through another character change in 4 weeks from now. That just seems too convoluted. I'm not complaining. I just don't know why you wouldn't do that from the get-go. I could see that. I don't see that, though. I think he's sticking with whatever version of this character he is now. On the bright side, he's Baron Corbin again, and I do think JBL is a great manager for him for now. JBL, I think, could be very valuable as a manager, which I don't know if we've ever seen before on the main roster, for anyone in recent years especially. But for Baron, he's never had a mouthpiece before, and I think he can talk on his own, but, he had Madcap, which was a fucking dumb pairing. You could tell they liked working with each other, and the whole hyena laugh shit was stupid. I think this is a great pairing, and we'll see where it goes. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes, I should say. Last few questions here. At Iwagu91, do you see Bron Breakker joining the main roster next year? I do. 100%. I don't think he's in NXT for much longer. He's already been a 2-time NXT champion. He's held the gold for the better part of 2022. He actually won on the first Tuesday, I think, of 2022. He lost it for like 2 or 3 weeks to Dolph Ziggler. And he's been champion ever since April. And I think he could lose it on Saturday. The last time he lost the championship was also in a triple threat. I could see JD McDonough winning it just because he lost the first time, and they're really high on JD as Shawn Michaels. I mean, that's pretty obvious. I could see JD McDonough winning it, and then maybe Bron's in chase mode for a little longer, is in the Rumble maybe. I could see Bron Breakker, and I think he should be called up the night after WrestleMania. And it would be a great full circle moment because he won back the NXT Championship on the Raw after WrestleMania last year. So doing that, I think, would be great. I think that'd be a really good idea. But either way, I do see him joining the main roster on the sooner side. And it will, I don't know when exactly. It could be in the Rumble, as early as the Rumble. Could be even before then, but I don't think that's a good idea. Either way, he will absolutely be Raw or SmackDown bound in 2023. No doubt about it. At the Wrestle Guys, first question here, Sal's first question. Austin Theory has been presented much different ever since Triple H took over. Do you think it's because Triple H isn't as high on Theory as Vince was, or do you think it's one of those things where it's one of those long-term stories where he loses a lot until he cashes in? That to me is not a long-term story. I know what you're getting at, but to me that's not a long-term story. That's just called fucking laziness. That is called incompetent booking right there, because we've seen the same thing now for well over a decade, almost 15 years now. Money in the Bank has been around for 17 years as of 2022. A majority of those fucking winners were made to look like such fucking losers before they cashed in, to the point where no one gave a shit. That's what happened with Sheamus when he cashed in 2015. When Punk cashed in 2008, he wasn't exactly pushed strong before he cashed in that year. Who else was there? I remember Sandow. I mean, he lost almost every fucking week. Dolph lost a lot in 2012 before he cashed in, a lot more than he should have. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Del Rio was another example in 2011 before he cashed in. In recent years, I'm thinking, Braun was a loser before he cashed in, and he cashed in unsuccessfully, as did Corbin. But again, their booking was putrid, to the point where no one gave a shit. And WWE in their minds probably thinking, oh, he dodged the bullet by not putting the belt on them. Yeah, because you booked them to look like losers, to the point where no one cares if they were to cash in successfully and become champion. We're kind of at that point now with Theory. Now, I think Sal sent this in before NXT. And on NXT, and maybe he sent it in afterward, I don't remember, but Theory showed up at the end of this week's show, teasing to going after the NXT Championship. I don't think that should happen. I think Theory is a main roster. He's already been in NXT twice. Theory does not need another NXT run. He was main roster ready when he got called up a year ago. He already did the Way stuff. He didn't win any gold in NXT. He didn't need to. He was ready to be called up at that point. He's on the main roster now. He's a former United States champion. He won the fucking briefcase in the main event of a Money in the Bank pay-per-view. They've booked him like shit lately, sure. I would only tease it, not go through with it. I feel like that would be very, very dumb. I know Roman's not around, but what moron would choose the NXT Championship, a developmental title, over the WWE World Heavyweight Championship? He's tried on Roman Reigns twice and failed, but not due to Roman kicking out or whatever. I mean, he failed, but didn't actually cash in. The first time was due to Brock getting to him first, and the second one was Tyson Fury spoiling his cash in. If he can kind of avoid that bullshit, then I think he can cash in and lose or win, whatever, but I think he would have a better chance. So don't waste it on the NXT Championship, I would say. It's an interesting concept. I like that they're teasing it. I wouldn't go through with it, though. The thing with Theory, and I don't think Triple H is lower or higher on Theory than Vince was. Vince was obviously very high on Theory. With Triple H, I think he also sees Theory as a star, if he didn't. I know he booked him like a goof in NXT. I realize that, but he hired him in the first place. He hired Theory to NXT and WWE 3 years ago. People say that, and I feel like people forget about that, is that it was Triple H who was responsible for bringing Theory into WWE 3 years ago. And if he didn't see anything in him, then he wouldn't have brought him into the company. Now, did he see him as a mid-carder? Did he see him as a future world champion? I think Triple H views the whole Theory thing the same way I do, where I don't think you should cash in anytime soon. I don't think he should be world champion before the end of the year. I don't think he should be world champion in early of 2023. I would wait until at least after WrestleMania, and hopefully by that point Theory's high enough up on the pecking order, high enough on the totem pole in WWE to where people can take him seriously in that light as a main event player. The problem is that if you want to wait that long, that's fine. You have to book the guy appropriately in the meantime. Having him fucking lose every single match he has is ridiculous. Having him lose to Johnny, and then this guy, and then that guy. He's not even being protected in defeat. He's just losing every single match he has. So, just from what I can tell, I respect Triple H's patience and wanted to push him like next year and not having him cash in anytime soon. That's fine, but if you want people to care when he cashes in at some point, he's got to win more matches. He's just not prioritizing Theory. And Vince didn't really prioritize him either. It's not like he was winning a lot of matches under Vince McMahon before, Triple H took over. So hopefully that improves. I don't think he's getting the Omos treatment or the fucking, Lacey Evans treatment where Triple H does not care about this person as much as Vince did. That was the case with Lacey Evans. That's the case with Omos, among others. I don't think that's the case with Theory, but he just needs more time to develop. And he is developing. He's getting a lot better than he was even a year ago. But he needs to win more matches. That's the key. There was really no reason for Johnny to win last week. I guess the feud's over. Okay. I would rather have Theory win and then maybe Johnny gets his win back. Theory should have at least won the first match. He should have at least won once. Maybe the feud isn't over. Excuse me, but I don't think he should have lost the first match, especially clean. I thought that was very dumb. Let's see. Next question, also from Sal. With Bray Wyatt back in WWE, who are some feuds that you would like to see him have. A couple come to mind for me. Drew McIntyre and Karrion Kross can be fresh feuds we haven't seen from him before. I mentioned this last week when people asked, who do you think Bray Wyatt's first rival is going to be? Drew, Karrion makes sense. Karrion and Bray as a match sounds like the cure for insomnia, but maybe it'll exceed expectations if it happens at some point. I know Karrion would love to work with Bray. He's made that very clear on Twitter and in interviews. I feel like he's made that pretty obvious. The match, I don't really care about it for the match. The spectacle of Karrion versus Bray at like a WrestleMania I think would be cool. The build-up leading up to it, the story they can tell. On the WWE stage, I feel like that feud could be really, really good. That being said, him and Drew is a fresh feud. Drew and Bray, that is. Bray, here's the problem, and I've mentioned this before with Bray, and we talked about it a couple of weeks ago when you sent in a question cell, that he's already feuded with most of the top talent that WWE has. Even some of the part-timers, like he's already done Cena to death, Randy Orton to death, Rollins to death, Roman to death. And that's 4 of their top stars right now. Cena's not there, but if he were to come back, he's not facing Bray again. They've already done that to death. So, I don't know. Bray versus those guys would be cool. Rollins, for the sole fact that their last feud sucked, I would make up for that by doing another one and having them kind of redeem themselves. That's an option. WWE really hasn't created a lot of compelling stars in the last several years to where I could see them being as, on the same level as Bray to where I think it would be an entertaining feud. That's really where the key is going forward, creating more stars for Bray to feud with, honestly, and people like that. So we're not seeing the same matches and same feuds and whatever. Him and Braun we've already seen before. Johnny Gargano, I don't know. I'm thinking of like the Raw roster. Theory, no. Him and Miz we've seen before, no thanks. Who else even is there, honestly? I'm not even really sure. I'm thinking in my head, like, who else even is left that they could put him with? I don't even know. I'm not even really sure. So, yeah, I would think Drew and Karrion would lead the list, especially since they're on SmackDown. Him and Sheamus could be interesting. Bray and Sheamus could be very interesting, just because Sheamus is a babyface now. Bray, I assume, is a babyface, but that's something. Bray and Ray would also, I think, be cool, too. Bray Wyatt and Rey Mysterio, I'm not sure if we've ever seen that before one-on-one, but I think that'd be cool as well. And the last question at BillMeister88, last question was, for today's episode anyway, what do you think of the worst and best parts of WWE and AEW right now? I think I answered something similar to this a couple of weeks ago. It might have been from you, Bill, but off the top of my head, with AEW, I think after watching last night's show, that MJF Regal stuff was incredible. I think you may have asked me at the time, like, who are the best and worst talents in the company? This is a little bit different, but MJF is the best thing going probably anywhere right now, aside from maybe Sami Zayn and the Bloodline stuff. That's the best stuff in WWE, is Sami Zayn and the Bloodline. In AEW, it's MJF. I think the Blackpool Combat Club stuff is fine. The Garcia-Jericho stuff, I really don't give a fuck about Jericho Appreciation Society. But I think Jericho facing former Ring of Honor champions is honestly a pretty good gimmick, for anyone that gives a shit, that is. I think it's cool. I've liked that. I liked him and Jericho. I thought Jericho and Dalton Castle last night was really good. I like that going on right now. The Acclaimed are really over. I like them. There's really not a lot else I'm really compelled by right now in AEW. I was liking the Moxley and Adam Page build-up before the match abruptly ended last night. My thoughts and prayers to the Hangman. That looked like it sucked. So that was not a good ending. Not a good ending to that match for him anyway, so hopefully he's okay. There's really not a lot else in AEW that's really tickling my fancy, so to speak, right now. In WWE, not that every storyline's a winner, but I'm loving the Bloodline stuff. Finally, they're moving forward with Dexter and Miz, which, thank God. What else even is there? I'm liking Bianca and Damage Control. That's fine. Liv's next character thing is interesting. Bray Wyatt being back is very exciting. Him being back is awesome, and whatever he did on SmackDown last week was great. LA Knight being back is great. Legado being on SmackDown is great. Those are all very cool. On Raw right now, the OC reunion, jury is kind of out on that. I don't really give a shit at this point about Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, but maybe that'll exceed expectations. Judgment Day is doing a lot better. I will say that much. Brock and Bobby I'm digging so far. So there's a lot of stuff right now I'm actually looking forward to on the WWE side of things. Rollins being United States champion. Gunther's doing a great job as Intercontinental champion. His brief feud with Sheamus and the Brawling Brutes was awesome. So those are probably, in WWE, like, what are the worst parts? The Dexter and Miz stuff, they had to move forward, and they finally did on Monday, so I'm not going to say that. What else is there that's not... I mean, the women's tag team title shit just doesn't really... They're as important now, maybe even less so than they were 6 months ago. They're just not important. They're not important at all. So I would probably say those are among the worst parts of WWE. There's also probably things I'm not thinking of, but those would certainly come to mind. I'm trying to think of other things that are like, what's just awful right now in WWE. I'm sure there is other stuff. I just can't really think of it, but those would be the things that come to my mind. WWE, I feel like the good outweighs the bad right now. Not that AEW has things that are bad. There's just a lot of stuff I don't either care about, or there's not really a lot, like the varsity athlete shit versus like the trademark and whatever. Who gives a shit with the Acclaimed? Who cares? That shit's awful. So I like the Acclaimed. The story they're involved in with those guys is terrible. The Keith Lee Swerve heel turn from Swerve and his tension with Keith Lee is also really good as well. I should mention that. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode, 464 here today of #AskGSM. Thank you guys so much for sending in your questions. I appreciate it. October 19th, 2022. If you didn't hear your question answered, I didn't, get rid of it or whatever. It's going to be answered next week here on the show. So I'm recording next week's episode either later today or tomorrow or at some point. So keep an eye out for that next Wednesday. And I don't know when it's going to be up. I'll be in California, so it might be up actually on the earlier side, although I'm actually behind, so it would be up. I don't know. It might be up around noon or whatever. I'm not exactly sure, but keep an eye out for that. And we'll answer your questions, the remainder of your questions. Then, thank you guys for sending in so many questions this week. That was what I was able to make it possible as far as to do 2 different episodes and break up the questions from one episode to another. We don't do this often. We don't do it normally. I only do it when I have to, so I appreciate you guys bearing with me. And I'm looking forward to doing that episode, recording it soon, having it up next Wednesday. And you guys are the best. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And we'll be back right here next Wednesday as if nothing really changes. You guys will get the episode on Wednesday, answering your questions from Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And that's about it. So if you want to send in a question to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant, #AskGSM, Facebook, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post, that I put up on every Tuesday. So keep an eye out for that, or on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question, not in next week's video, like I said, but rather in 2 weeks on November 2nd. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.